Hello, and welcome to Powered by Intuition, where we explore patterns, possibilities, and the power of perception. I am your host, Brittany Purr. I'm known as the Illuminator, bringing fear into fortune and chaos into clarity. Most of us are stuck in a loop of treating the symptoms, blaming others for this issue, and never asking, where did this all begin? And this topic really came up because of current events. Now, even though I talk about current events, realize that these episodes will meet you where you are when you need it most. The wisdom, the insights I share are timeless, even if it's tied to current events that are happening in this day and age. So be aware of that. Yes, I'm going to use a current event as a springboard for some insights, wisdom, and support for you in your daily life. And the intention is there. This will meet you when you need it most. So if you are watching this replay, if you're watching this a year from now, many years from now, it's still going to be relevant because I focus on human behavior and the human condition. Let's dive in. Obviously, well, not everybody, but most people are talking about the files that came through, the Epstein files, the things that they're finding in here that are horrific and unpleasant, and things that we really don't want to face in society. Let me elaborate on that. These are things that we don't really want to face in society, meaning these things were left unchecked, unaddressed until now. And with that, there is this rift forming within our culture. There's a cry to evolve, to be more civilized. And then there is this division that wants to remain animalistic, primal, primitive. And then there's the threshold where there's extremes on either side, right? There's extremes where there's still authoritarianism in, let's say, like very leftist or progressive values. And then obviously Epstein was on the extreme of the primal, primitive, inhumane side. But in between that can be peaceful coexistence that is still civilized, but regards nature in a healthy way, not in this unhealthy, destructive, horrific way. And one of the things that I'm not seeing is, how did this person come to be? How did they go through society so unchecked, just let loose, hidden in the corner that no one addressed until now? And as I thought deeper on that, this reflects in the psyche of a majority of people who don't pursue that shadow work, who don't shine a light on their dark side, and therefore do not keep it in check. And when we don't look at those things, there's a lot of people that are just like, oh, it doesn't happen, it doesn't exist, I'm going to ignore this, yada, 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 la, la, la. And I'm speaking about the person themselves. The files are a whole different conundrum and critter, and there's many people that are not able to handle it and may be extremely traumatized looking at that content. So please be mindful and aware of how you are reacting physiologically. If you've been through those situations, I suggest not re-traumatizing yourself by reviewing that stuff, because it gets pretty nasty. At least the snippets that I've seen, and I personally am not going through it. I'm sitting here questioning, why aren't we talking about how this monster was created? So I'm going to talk about it. We need to realize our behaviors. We need to integrate them and we need to acknowledge them when they are not working. There's a lot of people that would prefer to ignore it. I'm going to use something that's very obvious. The whole crowd that slavery didn't exist, or people were as slaves were better in that frame of work, which isn't true, but that's a way to hide the darkness in a corner so that it festers, grows, and stays unchecked. It's a way to absolve oneself of accountability. It's a way people do not take care of the problem. Oh, shoot. Darn. Hold on. Oh, no. Okay, don't know if you guys can hear now. Let me know, is that good? Can you hear me? I don't know if this is working. Might have to unplug it. Okay, it looks like it's on. Good. All right. So it's a way to, I brought up an example of shadow work, but this connects with our culture and this connects with how we operate ourselves. This connects with mindfulness of, I brought up the example of people who are trying to absolve the unpleasant feelings of slavery by saying, oh, slaves were better in slavery. They were treated better. They enjoyed it. And that is a way of keeping this dark, festering thing that's obviously not working in the corner so that they don't have to deal with it, so that they don't have accountability, so that they don't have to, shoot, here, I'm gonna unplug this. Doot. Hopefully you can still hear me. So that they don't have to see or deal with it or handle it. And that's phase 2, the accountability factor. When people do not hold each other accountable, these things go unchecked. As I was researching this, I was like, why isn't anybody talking about their upbringing? Because Epstein has a brother, the main culprit, and there's statements of the brother saying, oh, he's just having fun. It's not fun when it's at the horrific expense of others. That's not just having fun. That's being a horrific, horrible individual. And for someone to think that that is just having fun, they have a lot of issues. Even though they said their upbringing was fine and normal. Someone who pursues these things and says their upbringing is fine and normal has fawned. They have adapted to or acclimated their nervous system and themselves to horrific environments, thinking that that is a good thing, thinking that that is normal. And it's not, which is very fascinating to hear about that. The next step is, obviously, people need to come in and call things out for what they are. And I can't tell you how many times I've stepped in a room and just been like, bam, called it out. Called it out. I don't care how people react. Someone has gone off on a whole adult gone off on a full tangent, full tirade, because I wouldn't put people's personal information, mainly celebrities' information, at risk with a system that could be hacked, that could be extorted, that could cause problems. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to make sure that there are high safety standards because I respect people. But my threshold on that was no, unless we adhere to these standards and figure that out, which isn't too hard. That's not too much to ask for. But the person just heard no, and maybe they hadn't been told no before, and they flipped. They flipped so badly that there was an intervention. And just reflecting on that situation, it's very fascinating. Like, I will still say no. I don't care if you're throwing chairs. I don't care if you're screaming and yelling. I'll stand up to it because that is part of my modus operandi, is keeping people accountable. Doing unto others as I would have do unto myself. But there is a problem in our culture where people are too scared to stand up, too scared to handle these situations, and would prefer to run away rather than resolve. And when we run away and we don't resolve these situations, we're part of the problem. And that's what's happened in our culture. This problem was created decades ago. Harms were done. Harms were continued to let happen. And it was unchecked until now. And even now, what are the consequences besides those people who were harmed, those lives that were lost? So the one thing I can leave with you is go back to where it began. Go back to what is holding you back. Go into the history, your childhood. When was the first time someone programmed in your mind that maybe you weren't enough, or that you weren't good enough, or that you couldn't do this, or that you weren't strong enough? When was the first time that someone did harm you? When was the first time someone forced you to do something that you were not comfortable with? And be careful when looking back at that. Be careful of looking at that setup for it. Give yourself time, self-care, and be in a safe space. If you feel yourself being drawn too far in, start rubbing your legs, rubbing your hands together. Take a break. But more so, when you go back to those first moments, you will see that setup of A, B, C, D, and you'll begin to figure it out. And then you can begin to take a little bit of that energy and edge off as you learn from these circumstances. Now, a lot of people get into the learn from these circumstances by going, I will never again. I will never love someone again. I will never let this person, any dude be in my presence again, which is, it's more of a, there's a window of time to give space to yourself. But setting that hard line of like, I will never have a guy in my presence again, that doesn't serve or support anybody. That doesn't serve or support you. Maybe the boundary is I will not get drunk on a first date. I will not go to a guy's house alone on a first date. I will not be in this space alone on a first date when I don't know someone. Could be something like that. Or it could be something like, wow, I saw these signs of abusive behavior way back when. I'm going to make steps to really pay attention to that now and not make excuses for their behavior. Those are healthy mechanisms of moving forward and clearing that energy and taking what you've learned from it in a healthy way. Not a hard line, my way or the highway. It's being open yet knowing your boundaries and being able to enact on your boundaries, being accountable to yourself and your boundaries. And yes, it is looking at that dark side. It's looking at the things that you're not proud of. Maybe you've harmed someone else in lieu of protecting yourself or in the guise of protecting yourself because of a traumatic reaction. And it's okay to look at that. It's okay to face that. And it's okay to say, I made a mistake in that moment. It's okay to apologize, or it's okay to just let it go. This brings up forgiveness. Forgiveness is not for that person. Forgiveness is for you to let go of that burden, to clear it. Because you can forgive a dead person and they won't know any different unless, you have ghosts around you and that stuff. But that's a completely different story. Forgiveness is for you. It's not for them. Even though a lot of people, abusive people, will make it about them, about how you need to forgive them and give over all trust. It's not giving over all trust either. People earn respect. People get to earn your trust. Maybe that's a learning nugget, right? That's a learning wisdom, is people get to earn your trust. You get to really look at how that happens. Having your values set is another way that you can really spot or highlight these things. So if you don't have values, you're not going to have boundaries. If you don't understand what your top 5, 6 values are, it's going to be really hard to make applicable boundaries and really spot how someone's not living into that. Because you're not going to tell someone, like, let's use the relationship example. If you go on a date, you're not going to be like, my values are X, Y, and Z, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, right? You do that, someone who has narcissistic tendencies will be like, oh my gosh, my values are A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And they'll play that character in that role long enough to gain your trust and then pull the rug out. If you've been part of that behavior, you know that all too well, which, I've dealt with. But that's why I set up a value system, so that you don't tell them your value system. You run the checks and balances. You're like, wow. Personal example, dude was like, yeah, my dad would never pay creditors. He would just say checks in the mail and never pay them. Knowing my value system now, I would be like, wow, why are you sharing this with me? That's way out of integrity. That's really messed up. I would have hardlined, been like, we're, I don't think we're values aligned. Sorry. Have a good one. Have a good life. My life would have been much better. Really doing the checks and balances with the value system. And so that's why I developed that, of using the checks and balances and creating those boundaries and that boundary awareness that's healthy, that doesn't harm people or smack people, but it leaves room for grace and it leaves room for appropriate behaviors. Because a lot of times when we go through trauma, we're ready to just like throw punches and take no prisoners. And that is a perpetrator of harm. That causes harm. Even though you feel like it is a way you are protecting yourself, that is a harming behavior. It's something to look at, to shine a light on, to really see what it is that we're doing or causing and creating in the world. I personally was a complete a-hole as a kid because I grew up with self-righteous mechanisms and behaviors because of religious beliefs, and then the tables turned, and yeah, I got to see how harsh, how inept, how destructive and deplorable that behavior was. It was dehumanizing. And I felt dehumanized, yet I was perpetuating that. It's really messed up, right? But had I not shined a light on that, had I not done the deep work of being like really authentic and really in tune with myself and really open to dealing with that situation and handling the feelings that came up with it, I wouldn't be here today. I wouldn't be doing this. I wouldn't have learned these things. I would still be spinning my wheels and getting nowhere. These things aren't just to heal others around us. These things are for us. This healing, this shining a light on these dark spaces within each of us, within ourselves, and being like, wow, that's something that's part of me, and I'm going to keep that in check. That's what true power is. Knowing that you're capable of amazingly great things and amazingly horrific things and keeping it in check. Keeping your self-control so that you don't go to those dark spaces because you know what they are. You know what you're capable of, but you choose not to because you are in control, not this primal, whacked desires that do harm. You choose to do good. You choose to create betterment, not only for yourself, but for others. And in this day and age, it seems like people are punishing the good behavior, but never stop doing things that benefit each other. That is the epitome of humanity, is that we have the choice to do great things or great harm, but we choose to do great things. And yeah, the great harm came with money, came with prestige, came with that stuff. But the horrors aren't worth it. It's not worth it in the end to not sleep. Because I can tell you the truth. I don't think that dude slept. Your conscience will nag at you no matter how sociopathic you are. There are so many changes coming up right now. And we are at this threshold of, obviously, these revelations are coming through. Obviously, people who sided with a certain person who is in the presidency right now have associated with those dark desires and have put them in the corner in guise of self-righteousness. Because self-righteousness is a cover for other BS, pretty much. Putting others down or being extremely judgmental or making up things about another usually comes from their internal state or things that they have done that they're not addressing. So they externalize and put it on others so that they can be distracted from looking at themselves. Be aware of these things when you are doing that. Because, as I said, as a kid, I was really self-righteous and that was really messed up. And I know that I've hurt people in that. That's why I do this. Because I'm aware now of those harms that I perpetuated. A lot of people out themselves in different ways. Listen to what they're saying. Listen to how they address you. There was one person that came on a platform that I was beta testing, and it was launched to most of the world. And that person came up onto the platform, and the first thing they said was, "Hello, my fans." And the first thing I did was, "Fuck no, my dude," because I'm not a fan. And I said that out loud, point blank. And yeah, one of his friends was like a mutual to mine, and he was like, "I vouch for him." And I'm like, "No, I'm still gonna be a no. I don't care." That's standing within your power. That's standing within your autonomy. That's being able to spot these behaviors right like that without hesitation and standing in your power. And point blank, I said, "We're just not values aligned." And he said, "Well, what's the values?" And I'm like, "I don't want to get into it. That's for me to know and for you to find out." So when we do the work, we can really progress in our lives. We can progress in knowing who remains in our friend circle, who remains in our businesses, who remains in our periphery. And you really get to adjust your life to what matters to you. Another aspect in culture that we see this reflected is within our healthcare system. A lot of people spend time treating the symptoms rather than the core. And when we're lost in the symptoms, it's like firefighters being uncoordinated, chasing after the embers rather than dealing with the big blaze. It's not really going to work well, is it? And all too often, and this came up during COVID, where I was like, why isn't anybody telling people to be proactive? Why isn't anybody telling people to boost their immune systems? Like, I saw that train coming down the track. I'll say it till I'm blue in the face. I saw that coming. There were reports on it. There was TikToks where people were talking about it. And I was like, well, we're boosting our immune system from here on out. So prior to March, when things shut down, my daughter and I were boosting our immune systems. We were taking care of ourselves. We stayed healthy. And I think we got it like once, and it was super mild because we did the work. We took the time, we looked at what was happening, or at least I did, and really paid attention. And then when it came, we were ready. When the time to rise comes, you'll be ready. And that time is coming very soon. The time for you to stand up and stand in accountability, even if people don't listen to you in the moment, because people are going to do what they're going to do. Even if they're like, we don't care, you're gone from the family, whatnot. Just know that you said what you said and your statement landed. If they do a big reaction, you know that statement hit. You know you launched an arrow and it hit the bullseye. If they just ignore you, so be it. You know that there's other spaces that are better for you. And if they have any sort of reaction, you get to know a little bit more about what's going on with them. And a lot of times, I see a lot of people feel inadequate, low self-esteem, and react based on that rather than addressing it and healing it and becoming a whole person that understands their virtues and values and understands who they are, who they authentically are. I feel so many people are lost in this day and age and just don't know where to turn, don't know where to go, and just kind of do life in a way that is very hollow, very shallow, and meaningless. So, one of the things that I'm going to close this with. A lot of people tell you to seek success. Actually, there's two things. I'm going to point out something that someone said recently about the files, where they were like, yeah, we knew about this. We knew this stuff was happening. We knew. That's why we were helicopter parents. And being a helicopter parent is not teaching your child to thrive. It's not teaching your child to navigate the world as an adult. As a parent, my job as a parent is to help my child to be the best adult that they can be. So they're out of my hair. But that's my job as a parent. I want my child to have their autonomy. I want them to live their life. I want them to be prepared for that. A helicopter parent does not do that. And more so, what really frustrated me with that statement is they knew it was happening and they did nothing to stop it. That's fucked up. Because if that many people stood up and protested, if they knew, they should have done something to stop that, not protected their own to a detriment. So I had to get that off my chest. But to wrap this up, for you to really have success, you need to look at fulfillment. Success is fulfillment. That is not something that is off the harm of others. That's not feeding off of another person. That's not harming someone so that you feel powerful and wonderful or profit off of pain. Fulfillment is doing what supports you and helps you to feel self-care, nourished, healthy, and alive. That's doing the art project. That's not using someone else. That's not abusing someone else. That is you for you. That's not putting on makeup so that men look at you. That's putting on makeup as an expression of your artistry. Because you love colors and you love the textures and you love the powder and you're fully immersed and you're fulfilled when you do that. Doesn't matter if someone compliments you or not. It's not about the compliments. It's not about someone being like, oh, wow, that looks like clown makeup. Ew. And you feel bad about it. You don't feel bad about it because you're like, this is me. This is my art form. This is my expression. That's what fulfillment is about. It's not about needing external validation. It's about internal validation. So I wanted to wrap up with that. And let me know if you have any questions. Feel free to talk in the chat. Oh no, hold on. What happened? There we go. Feel free to chat and comment. Let me know what you got from this, and I will see you next week. So thank you for joining Powered by Intuition.